You probably have seen a lot of advertisements online where people say, hey, buy this package from me about all the best prompts. They call them prompts, right? And that's what prompts are. Prompts are basically ways to better say it and tell the chat GPT what to do, as opposed to asking it a question. So if there's anything you get from this part of the presentation, don't ask it a question. Tell it what to do. So I'm going to give you free prompts right now. These are the free prompts, because prompts, first of all, you shouldn't have to pay for prompts. That's kind of silly. People, we got to make money somehow. So every time something else comes out on the market, everybody wants to make you spend money on it. So I'm going to give you some of these prompts. The first thing you need to know is you need to give your ChatGPT person a personality. Now, what in the world does that mean? All right, well, let's show you. I've got ChatGPT pulled up here. And so guess what I told my ChatGPT person? You are a marketing expert with the ability to write job ads that move people to want to apply for the jobs that you write. That's personality. I'm telling him who he is or she is. Okay? Because this is my friend. So I'm telling it first, this is what, and look what he answers back. Absolutely. As a marketing expert, I understand the importance of crafting job ads and effective. So now it's responding back to me and saying, yes, of course, this is my position. Now, if it tells you that you're the position, you're like, well, wait a minute, you're missing some of it. You can just keep having the dialogue and the conversation. But step one is give your AI person a personality. Tell them who they are so that they know where to dig to pull information. Now, I'm going to address Dan's question real quick, because Dan talked about the fact that it's only 2021 and all that, which is fine. It doesn't matter, right? The whole purpose of think of AI like a thesaurus of thought. So what is a thesaurus for? Do we know what a thesaurus is? I've been at some of these things and people are like, what's a thesaurus? I can't even say the word, right? So a thesaurus is you're trying to take an idea and say it in a different way. And so we go to a thesaurus to say, help me pick a different word, or help me say it this way or that way. That's really what AI can be for you when it comes to ad writing. I want to say this. Hey, ChatGPT, you're a marketing expert. I want to say this. I want to talk about this. Help me say it in a way that sounds fun or exciting, or is in the tone of Snoop Dogg, or whatever context you want to give it. We'll talk about this in a second. But you're basically telling it what to do. Does that make sense? And so when it comes to this AI technology, first give it a personality. Yeah, I tell the ChatGPT the tone of the message that I want. Exactly. That's exactly how you're supposed to do it, Cynthia. And it will be so effective for you. So give it context. What is context? It's all the answers you just got from the manager from this sheet. That's your context. Hey, ChatGPT, at this company, they do such and such. At this company, they've won awards because of this. At this company, there's this position they're trying to fill. And here's some information about the position. Here's some of the core values. Here, I mean, it's going to be kind of a long paragraph, which is why if you filled this in, you can just copy and paste it over. But you have to give it context. It's kind of like data, like a spreadsheet, data in, data out. Have you ever heard of that? Junk in, junk out, garbage in, garbage out. ChatGPT functions the exact same way. It can only feed you based on what you've given it first. And so you're telling it it's an expert, you're giving it a personality. Now I need to give it what I want it to talk about. So give them this information, give them the schedule, give them the pay structure if you want. Now, one caveat here, when it comes to context, be aware that ChatGPT and most AI technology is public. So the information that you give it should also be public information, not private. Does that make sense? Now, in job writing, it's a little bit easier to do, because most of what we, like for example, you don't have to give ChatGPT the salary, right? Because you don't want that to be public, right? Out there, if somebody were to ask ChatGPT, hey, tell me what so-and-so pays, right? Because you could do that, by the way. But just make sure that when you're giving it context and you're feeding it information, that it's information that won't get you in trouble, is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense? So just be aware of that as you're feeding it into there. Action verbs. Again, you want to tell it what to do. Write a job ad that is 500 words that uses this keyword at least 10 times in the ad and has this, and you give it all the context. You can actually tell it to do that. I think, Dan, you actually mentioned that, didn't you?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to see if you could actually do that prompt like that.
So ChatGPT still doesn't understand concepts of optimization. because ChatGPT, again, it's a thesaurus of thought, so it's not going to take the algorithm ideas into play. This is why you have to watch it a little bit. And so if you say write an optimized job ad, it's not going to understand the term optimize very well. Does that make sense? It won't understand that context. So what you have to do is you have to tell it, write me a job ad that is 500 words or less using this keyword a minimum of 10 times. Does that make sense? You're actually defining it. So that's where this be specific comes into play. So you want to be specific. So you can't just simply say, give me an optimized job ad. That's not how it works. I want to be specific about what optimization actually means to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
it does.
That's why in this particular presentation, that's why we go over the concepts first, because then once you have the concepts, you can now use that to tell ChatGPT, here's what I want you to give me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, you do references. References is where I can say, I want it to sound a little bit more like Barbie, or I want it to sound like Snoop Dogg, or I want it to sound adventurous as if you're an archaeologist like Indiana Jones, right? So you can actually give it a reference, a frame of reference or a character, so that when it writes it for you, it will put it in that frame of mind, if you will. Does that make sense? You don't have to give it a reference. So I think it was Cynthia that kind of mentioned this. You give it the tone of the message. That's what this is the tone, basically the reference. Sometimes the tone is enough. You can just say, make it sound adventurous, and that's all you need. But sometimes you want it to be, well, I want it to be adventurous like Indiana Jones, who was an archaeologist, and then suddenly it'll start using archaeology terms and things like that to make it sound more fun, right? And so you can be that specific. Also examples. So whenever I do a job ad rewrite, you know how I do these 6 sections? So section 1 is the elevator pitch, section 2 about our company, section 3 a day in the life. And so I can tell ChatGPT, I want it to include 6 sections. Here's section 1, here's section 2. Again, this is part of that context where you can give an example that I want these 6 sections in what you write for me. And here's the context for this section, and you just tell them, so that way when it spits it out to you, it actually spits it out in those 6 sections. Like you can actually be that specific with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great point, Cynthia. I want it to sound like a senior executive or a first-year law student. You can absolutely do that. Those are some great examples of that. Cynthia's obviously been playing with AI, so she's my friend she's been talking to for a while now. And to think, years ago, talking to yourself weird, and now we're encouraging everybody to do it. So hand-holding is basically, again, always give it more context. If you don't like what it spits out, it probably doesn't have enough context. One of my favorite questions to ask it is based on what I've given you, do you understand what I'm looking for? Is there anything that you think that I might be missing? And then it'll actually spit out stuff it might think you're missing. Well, you didn't talk about this. Is that like, you can actually have ChatGPT tell you that, like, well, you didn't talk about such and such. Is that important? And you can just tell it, oh, that is important. Please add that to it, right? So you can have this kind of conversation with ChatGPT. Like I said, sometimes it feels weird at first, but oh my gosh, it is so fun. Now think of it this way. ChatGPT is builds over time and is like a friend who remembers every single conversation you ever have with it until you tell it not to anymore. Because you can tell it not to. You can erase everything, right? But that's the cool part about this is, if you're, most of us in staffing, if there are certain types of positions that you focus on for your particular staffing agency, then over time, as this friend of ChatGPT learns about the industry and the role and the information that you're feeding it, guess what happens? It becomes so much more powerful for you. And then it spits out stuff within seconds, and you can literally create a brand new job ad within seconds that you can just copy and paste and make some tweaks to it. Whenever I use ChatGPT, I don't copy and paste everything. Everything is applicable. So you still have to read it. You still have to go through it. So there's still a little bit of work there, but man, it can generate some ideas that you're just like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought to explain it in that way. And now it becomes a powerful thing that you can put in the job ad and say, holy cow, this actually nails it on the head. And that's why I call it a thesaurus of thought, because it helps me take my thoughts and all this mumbo jumbo, but then makes me look cool because it actually writes it in a format that makes it much more effective in trying to advertise the job.